You need to read it again and read it another time. Now, a thing that would help would be if you would get the books, some of the commentaries that I said that would be good. It would help you. This book is a good book, and you may not read everything word for word because there's a lot of information in here. I don't think I ever read the entire book. There's a lot of information in here. But it would definitely help to bring some understanding. All right? Now, what I want to do tonight, we want to accomplish chapters 2 and 3. Those are the 7 churches. And then I want to look at something else for me. So we're going to try to do this within this hour. But the thing I want to do first, I want to go back. What verse in Revelation chapter 1 did I tell you was the key to understanding Revelation? What verse? What verse did I tell you is the key to understanding Revelation? Because that verse is so vital that something you would not hear last time, so this would be good for you to hear tonight. Go back and tell me what verse. What verse they give you in Revelation chapter 1 is the verse that's the key to understanding the book of Revelation. You can't forget this verse, because if you really follow this, it's going to help you to understand. All right, verse 19. Let's go to verse 19. Let's read it together. Verse 19. Come on. Write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. You got 3 divisions. Write the things which thou hast seen. That occurs basically in chapter 1. The vision of Christ himself, where he told John, he said, now I was dead, but I'm he that liveth. I live now. I have the keys. All right? And there's a description, basically verses 12 through 18. The second part says the things which are. In other words, the things presently that were going on in John's day and still going on today, actually. That would be what? The 7 churches in Revelation chapter 2 and 3. But the majority of Revelation is going to be the last part. And that would be what? The things which shall be hereafter. And that would be chapters 4 unto the end. Okay, I promised tonight that I was going to have some handouts. And I need some assistance to pass these handouts. My sister Sherry is coming. Let's see what I got. I got 2 pages. And this information is going to be about the 7 churches. So let's look at, we're going to look at the 7 churches. Now, my wife was doing her homework this evening before she came back here. And she was all into the 7 churches. And she said, you're not going to discuss, because I told you I was going to what? Kind of briefly talk about them. And I said, yeah, we're going to talk about it, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. You know, one reason why I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time? One reason I'm not going to spend a lot of time is because Revelations 2 and 3 are the easiest chapters in the whole book. So that's why I want you all to read. Now, if you got a question about one of the 7 churches, something I may not cover, we certainly will answer the question to the best of our ability. But this, most times, if you're going to hear somebody preach a message, they come from one of these chapters. You know why? Again, these are the easiest chapters. Unfortunately, and I'm not trying to put my brothers down and sisters, but unfortunately in the black church, most black pastors and evangelists and missionaries have not studied Revelation as they should. They think it's too hard. But what did we say last time? The scripture said that we'll be blessed by this book. And if the Lord said he'll be blessed, then he certainly will not have given this information to be so hard that we could not gain an understanding. Am I right? All right, she's almost finished. Trying to give her a moment to. She has 2 pages that she's passing out. Now, if you look at the notes that I have given here, written here, 7 churches, the things which are. There's a threefold application of these letters. All right, number 1, a local application. In other words, these 7 epistles or letters, portray actual conditions in the 7 local churches. So when you read each one of these churches, these are churches that existed in John's day, in Asia Minor, the western side, western peninsula of Turkey. The western peninsula of Turkey. I got to do better by getting some maps. I have to remember, I'm a history major, so I visualize all these maps in my mind. But I know most people don't keep over it like that, so I'm trying to get some maps in here as well. All right, these 7 churches, we're going to look at a couple in a minute. The second one, a prophetic application. Let me read this. Prophetic application to the church throughout the dispensation to the rapture, revealing the spiritual condition of local churches and individuals in the churches. So these letters were written about the 7 churches in John's day, but at the same time there is a prophecy, because let me put it this way, occurred to all the churches of Asia. Y'all follow what I'm saying? All right, let me put it this way. There were many other churches that were in Asia, in the Middle East. But God only chose 7 out of the several churches that have been established. See, because for example, you don't see in the epistle to Corinth. And you know there was a church in Corinth because we got what? 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Y'all follow what I'm saying? You don't see a church here, Galatia, which was actually a province. But there were churches in Galatia or Galatia. So he chose 7 churches. The reason he chose these 7 churches because the things that were going on in these 7 churches were happening in the entire church world. Alright? Not only in the church world of that day, but you find the same kind of thing that's going on in today's time. So there's a church today that has the characteristics of the church at Ephesus, the church at Smyrna, the church at Laodicea. Everybody understand what I'm saying here? Because we're looking at what? You're looking at the condition, that is the spiritual condition of the church. Alright, so 2 things. You look at what's going on in the churches of that day, but you're also looking at what? What's going on in the church from John's day all the way where? To now. Alright? Everybody understand that? Then the third thing, an individual application. Alright? So that the individual may be warned by the failure revealed therein. So let's just say the church at Smyrna, which was a good church. The church at Smyrna could have had some members there who had the characteristics of the folks at Laodicea. Am I making any sense with that? Have I lost you? Everybody understand what I mean by that all? In other words, Smyrna was a good church. But we know that there have never been any churches that had 100% righteous people. Y'all follow what I'm saying? So overall, the people at Smyrna were good, but it could have been somebody at the church at Smyrna that had what? Characteristics of the church at Laodicea. At the same time, the church that was at Laodicea, which was maybe the worst church, could have had a few members there with the characteristics of the people in the Smyrna church. Alright? In John's day and even today. So then, let me ask this question. Don't answer it out loud. Which one of these churches you belong to? See, if you're going to look at it, the individual application, that's how you have to look at it. Which one of these churches do I belong to? Am I making sense with this? Alright, points of similarity in the letters. Point number one, the letters are addressed to the various pastors of these churches. Because, look at verse 1, chapter 2. Unto the angel of the church of Ephesus. You look at verse 8. And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna. You find that in each group. The angel of the church, angel means messenger. So who's the angel in these churches? The pastor. You ever heard sometimes we have an evangelist who comes here and he may say to the angel of the house. He's referring to the pastor. Alright? So the angel is the pastor. So the epistle was written to the pastor of the church about what was going on within his church. Number 2, Christ rebukes every church except the 2nd and 6th church. And that would be what? What 2 churches we talking about? Smyrna and who? Philadelphia. Alright? So, he rebukes every church. The other 5 churches, he had at least one point that he condemned them about. Now, he had some good things to say about most of the other 5. But he had a point of condemnation. Of course, Laodicea, if I remember correctly, had no good points. No good points about Laodicea. Alright, point 3. The 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th churches are commanded to repent, while the 2nd, 4th, and 6th are not. Okay, who's the 4th church? Thyatira. Alright. Point 4, every church except the 2nd and 6th is more corrupt than its predecessor. The last is the most corrupt of all. Alright, let's look at some major points at each one of these churches. The church, question?
Well, comment, I think it's interesting that you say that even at the good churches, you had people who may have had the Laodiceans attitude or problems. Because it even shows us today, because, you know, a lot of times people try to look at, you know, 1 or 2 members and then they, you know, they say whatever they want to say. But even the churches that Jesus dealt with, you know, even those good churches, I think it's important to note that that wasn't for 100% membership. Even in some of the bad churches, or quote unquote bad churches, that wasn't 100% of the membership. And so, you know, it just goes to show us even today, there is no perfect church. You're going to have, you know, people at different levels of maturity at every church.
Different levels of maturity.
And then some that are not saved at all.
Not saved at all, yeah. And sometimes people think, particularly the older members of the church, because of what traditionally happened years ago. How come the pastor don't see this? How come the pastor don't stop this? How come the pastor don't put this person out of church? The church is not designed to put folks out. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Now, the church has to have standards. Okay? You don't just allow anything and everything to happen. But it's not designed to put folks out. Because my hope is that if I can keep praying and preaching to people, that even if they have not come up to where they need to be, that one day they will be saved and they'll come up to the point that they need to be. We got any more handouts back there? No. Here you go. You can give Brother Walker the handouts. God bless you, sir. All right. So, therefore, you had all these different attitudes, these different things that actually went on within these churches that Sister Riley just mentioned. So, if you got a little question or comment, please, just raise your hand or stop me, because I want to hear from him. I don't want to do all the talking. The last time I did most of the talking, I said, I want you to ask questions and talk tonight. All right, the rebukes and the commendations to the 7 churches. All right, the church at Ephesus. The message for Christ was they had left their first love. What do you think that really means? What are you saying? Did they leave God altogether?
If I had to guess, I would guess, when we use it the way we use it today, is some of the things that we once did to show our commitment to Him. They have fallen away from those things.
Okay.
That's the way we kind of use it today.
All right, anybody else? They had left their first love. So did they leave the Lord altogether? The answer is no. They had not left God altogether, but they were not at the standard that God wanted them to be. I would say that they were in a backsliding condition as a whole. Now, when a person is backsliding condition, that doesn't mean that they have completely backslid. But if they continue, what's going to happen? They're going to be all the way out. See, so when you left your first love, okay, maybe I don't have the same enthusiasm. Maybe I'm not praying like I used to. Y'all follow what I'm saying? I'm not reading my Bible, not coming to church as I used to. Maybe I have started compromising. Now, there are some things you can start compromising with that maybe is not necessarily sinful, but the compromise will do what? Will lead you into sin. It begins to what? Take you away from the Lord. Am I making any sense with that? Come out from among them and be ye what? Separate, said the Lord. If I am just always hanging with the wrong crowd, that crowd eventually is going to pull me. Now that doesn't mean, and I try to make this very clear to folks, we don't set ourselves apart from anybody, say we better than anybody, that you can't be with folks who are not saved. No, that's not what we're saying at all. Because how you going to draw people if you're not around? But see, if I'm best of buddies with individuals, and I do what they do what I do, then you got to be careful there. Because if you're not, then that person can do what? Pull you to what they're doing. All right? Then the next church, Smyrna, they were enduring tribulation and poverty. Now, this church, you go read, they had a lot of things that were happening within this church. And the saints as a whole were poor. They did not have very much money. And it was probably because of the fact of their walk with Jesus. By now, Gentiles were heavily, in numbers in the church. But to give you an example of what could bring you to poverty back then, if you were a Jewish convert, as the church started with the Jewish people, the Pharisees and the priests would put you out of the synagogue. To put you out of the synagogue would mean you were outside in terms of society. If you were not a member of the synagogue, you couldn't get a job in Jerusalem. Nobody gonna hire, nobody gonna deal with you. All right? If you, of course, as the church began to blossom among the Gentiles, then that means that what? Other groups, of course, the devil's behind it. He would do everything he could to stop the saints from being able to what? To make a living that was going to what? Take care of their needs. Now that didn't happen all over the Roman Empire, but it did happen frequently. And guess what the devil is doing now? He's going back to it, y'all. Y'all hear that I just said? What I mean by that? Okay, the issue of same-sex marriage. If you are a photographer, you want to make cakes, you want to have a building that you can rent for different occasions, and you decide, I'm going to take a stand for what I believe. I'm not going to go to a wedding, same-sex marriage, and take photos. Then what's happening now? The law is coming in. saying you got to do it. Or basically what? You get out of the business. That's cutting your life. That's done by design. Because people that really believe the word of the Lord and they're going to stick with their conviction, they're not going to go to a wedding to take a picture. Am I right about that? All right, that's by design.
What about counseling and therapy?
Tell about that, because she was in counseling one time in school.
You know, well, it's the same thing. When a couple comes to them who wants marital advice or help or, you know, couples therapy, and if they are of the same sex, you know, they basically are saying you cannot turn them away if you're a therapist or a counselor. Because when I was taking classes, the teacher asked me, so are you saying to me that you will not counsel a same-sex couple? Because he began to talk about the ethics that, you know, of that profession. And so they would have trouble also. I told him, no, I would not counsel a same-sex couple because I don't believe that the same sex should be married. And so
that was some years ago. That was some years ago.
Yeah,
and it's shameful because what they want to do, they want to try to what? They want to force me eventually to what? To marry. And many ministers have kind of look at that maybe not doing anyway. I talked to Dr. Alan Cabot. Most of y'all know him, pastor of Mount Hall in the church. Group of ministers was talking, and he said, "Brother," now what he was trying to do then, this was a few years ago. He said, "Now I don't perform any ceremonies outside of my church building, and the people that I marry, perform the ceremony for, they must be a member of my church." So he's looking ahead. But we got some legal advice in one of our workshops. We have a judge that belonged to Susan Hawkins Church. She's a judge. She gave us legal advice and said, that's not going to work. Even with that. Say because,
under the law?
well, she said that it just saying I'm going to only marry people that are members of Little Valley. She said, what if you have a situation where a person joins your church and you didn't know that this is the lifestyle?
But what if it's not church bylaws?
Well, that's why we have the church bylaws. That's why the legal office of the Church of God in Christ advises to stipulate it in our bylaws so that if something comes up, we would have that in the bylaws, plus we have the statement from the General Assembly, that's the lawmaking body of the Church of God in Christ, to show this is what we believe, this is the stand that we believe. But they also advised us not to do funerals or weddings of non-members. That's what we went by.
Is that in the bylaws?
We didn't put it in our bylaws. No, but that's what was advised. Now we discussed this at business meeting. The purpose of that advice would be that if I'm doing the funerals of non-members, people who don't believe as we believe, as we do funerals from time to time, that if a couple, same-sex couples, said, I want you to marry, or I want to use your facility, and you don't allow them to do it, then they might try to come back and say discrimination.
Okay. But I think we said something about
We did address this.
Our members, family
Right.
members of our members.
Right.
Still be covered under
Yeah.
our-
What we voted on about 2 or 3 years ago, that we would do the funerals of members here, funerals of immediate family members, even if they're not a member of the church. We said we would do that. And some other cases we would look at let the board, do it. We have to be real careful about some things now because of where the law is going. And that's not to say that I wouldn't do the funeral of a person that was not a member, because I probably still would, as we look at the climate and look at what is going on. Okay, now, the church at Pergamos, they were holding to what? False doctrines. And one of the things, if you look at the second page, let me tell you what was going on. You all see on the second page of other notes. In verse 14, rather, you see the doctrine of Balaam. How many of y'all remember the prophet Balaam in the Old Testament? Okay. The doctrine of Balaam speaks of corrupt teachers and preachers who will lead people into fatal compromise with immorality, worldliness, and false ideologies, just like the prophet Balaam in the Old Testament. God told him not to go with the men that had come from Moab, King Balak. Y'all remember the story, don't you? And he told him he couldn't go. But then they came back and offered him some money. He wanted to go then, didn't he? And in the end, what did he tell King Balak of Moab? He said, I tell you what you can do. I can't curse God's people. But I can tell you what to do to get God angry with his people. Send those women over there. Entice the men that they commit fornication. See, he made a compromise for money. This is what was going on in this particular church of Pergamos. They were teaching these doctrines. The other one was the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. All right, verse 15, the followers of Nicholas, a heretic. And look at what these people, they were Gnostic people. What is Gnostic or Gnosis? Knowledge of spiritual mysteries, esoteric knowledge, held by the ancient Gnostics to be essential to salvation. What they did, they taught people they taught impure and immoral doctrines such as community of wives. I mean, you married several women at the same time. That committed adultery and fornication was not sinful. This was being taught in the church. Now here's something else. This teaching here back then, as well as now, teaches that man can get to the point of being divine. That Okay, I'm pretty sure, yes, I'm not familiar with that name right now.
I believe it's cash or something, but anyway, some guy out in the Midwest
Okay.
had several wives or community of wives.
How about these folk that teach you can become a god now? That you become a little god. That's what the Gnostics were teaching. They were teaching that you evolve. That you become better over time. And they even say this is what happened with Jesus. Alright? And in order to be saved, you got to obtain a certain knowledge. Let's look at the next church. Church at Thyatira. They were being seduced by a woman. I got a note on the second page. This woman in the scriptures, Revelation 2:20, she was called Jezebel. Now listen, this is not the same Jezebel of the Old Testament. But the reason that the Lord no doubt referred to a woman that was teaching, or women who were teaching, because they had a Jezebel spirit. Alright? So the analogy was used from the Old Testament. False prophetess. Alright? And this church was submitted and tolerating false teachings in the church. That's why you got to be real careful. This is why you need Bible class. So that you will be informed and know whether this is the word of the Lord or not. Y'all hear what I'm saying here? Something can sound like it's in the Bible, but it's not in the Bible. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. That's not in the Bible. It sounds good. Now, there may be some truth to that. Y'all follow what I'm saying? But that's not in the Bible. Alright? I'm going to give you an example right quick. Check my tax on it, because I want to get to something else believe. But I told y'all some years ago, there was a particular leader within the church, within the district, that was over the district choir. And she was actually, somebody see, she was actually teaching at district choir rehearsal that the young ladies, this is what she told me, because I remember her saying it. She said, now, we have a shortage of men. Well, the church has always had more Alright? She said, since we have a shortage of men, what you young ladies need to do, you need to go out there and date these men who are not in the church. Because if you date them, they'll follow you back to the church. Now, is that wholesome teaching or unwholesome? No, it's unwholesome. You can get somebody in trouble like that. And when my father found out she was teaching that, he said, y'all can't go back to district choir person now. You can't go. And I remember I was with them in class there, and she came and said, Pastor Rice, I know the members, the choir members have been coming back to rehearsal and say, what's wrong? Why? If you ever been around my dad, he's quiet spirit, but he is very, very upfront. And he looked, right now I told you, you're wrong for this teacher. He corrected her, because she was not a member of our church, she was a member of another church. But I could go into some other things that's even worse than that. Yes, ma'am. Well, don't call it no church name. Don't call it no church name. Okay. You go over. Now, I don't see a thing wrong with it. But be sure you know the word of God for yourself. Now, you talk to that. When you talk. Right. Now, no, it's not. Now, here's the thing. She asked me, was it okay for her to go, was she wrong? I said, she's not wrong, but I wouldn't tell everybody. You know why? She's been here for years and years and years. Y'all follow what I'm saying? But not every member will be ready for that. Say amen. So, if you're wondering about, then come see the pastor by himself and talk to him. Say amen. All right. The church at Sardis, they had people about to spiritually die. You can go back and read and see what's going on. Church at Philadelphia, they were given an open door protection. Church at Laodicea, this was the worst church out of all. They were lukewarm. And what did God tell them? He said, I would that you were hot or cold. But since you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. You think about this. Most foods and drinks that you eat or you drink, you want it cold or hot. Am I right about that? Anybody here drink lukewarm coffee? You want it hot. Now they got a cold that's out there, but you definitely don't want it lukewarm. You don't want no lukewarm ice cream. You want it to be cold, don't you? All right. Now, one other point, we almost finished this first part tonight. There are theologians who believe, you can read the statement, there are those who believe the seven churches also represent the seven different church ages. Now, most theologians, Jimmy Swaggart, Clarence Lockett, and Prophet John Hayden, most of them believe this. The only problem is, we don't really have enough scriptures to support this theory. But I can see this very closely or clearly because of what has happened over time period. Let's look at the seven churches right quick. The church in Ephesus was known as the Apostolic Church. Year 30, that's around time Jesus went back to heaven, day of Pentecost, up to what, 100. Now, even though they had left their first love, I told you, it didn't mean they had what? Left God. This is why Paul was writing all these epistles to the churches, trying to get them what? On track many times. Church at Smyrna was the persecuted church, because after 100 AD, even before 100, the saints were being persecuted. Some kind of awful. That's when they were taking the saints and sawing them asunder. And it actually began before 100 AD, taking them and boiling them, pots of oil, all kind of cruel things. Putting them out in the arena for bears and lions to attack them. The church at Pergamos was known as the Roman church. You can see the years. The year 313 to 600. What's the Roman church? It's really talking about the Roman Catholic Church. Catholic means universal. When you go back and study church history, you don't read about different denominations. This is the time the Pope comes in, bishops, and you had a whole lot of erroneous teachings that developed. They were selling what you call indulgences. That means that the priest, you give him $200, and he guaranteed you go to heaven. Sell you stuff. It's in history. So if you go study world history, you can see it. Now, there had to be somebody saved during that time period. But history doesn't give you very much information. Alright? And the reason I know somebody was saved, because what did the Lord tell Elijah when he thought he was on the wall? He said, I got 7,000 that had bowed down. Somebody's always going to live right. But it was a terrible time, and then it gets even worse when you get to Thyatira. You go into the Dark Ages, and you all ought to remember the Dark Ages if you went to school in terms of studying history. And then you have what? The church of Sardis represents the Reformation. Martin Luther. Everybody remember Martin Luther, don't you? 1517 to 1700. This is when the different denominations began to flourish. And then there was the Philadelphia church. Alright? The Philadelphia church is when you had mission. This is the time that the baptism of the Holy Ghost looked like just dropped as a bomb. It started in the mid-1800s. Well, it really started even before then. The Great Awakening that was in Europe and America. Then the baptism of the Holy Ghost begins to what? Begins to fall in different places. Wales, over in England. And then, of course, here in America. And then you get to the Azusa Street revival, where it really takes off. And the church goes forward. Now, what the theologians are saying is that we are now entering, or already have entered, gone out of the church in Philadelphia. And the reason it's called the mission church, because during that time period, missionaries began to do what? Go all over the world. All right, spreading the gospel. But they're saying we basically have left and gone into the Laodicean church age. The lukewarm church. Now, keep in mind now, that's not necessarily true for everybody. I don't consider Lily Valley as a Laodicean church. Y'all not saying amen. No, y'all see, nobody said that. Alright? But overall, the church is not doing as well as it ought to be. Particularly not in America. Look at this struggle that we got in America. Even the struggle between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. All this a part of it now. Y'all know that, don't you? You know, I've been telling y'all, as a race of people, we tend to vote for the Democrats. But I got a problem with the Democrats that support abortions, same-sex marriage, and a lot of other foolish ideas. On the other hand, I got some problem with Donald Trump, too. I got a problem with both of them. However, if you read the platform, and it's on the internet, if you read the platform of both parties, you identify more with the Republican Party platform. Black people voted Republican for many, many years. And it kind of flipped in the 1960s. And the flip was done on purpose. Money. Welfare program. Lyndon Johnson, President Lyndon Johnson, who produced and started those welfare program, said that if he got that legislation passed, black people would vote for the Democratic Party for the next 100 years. He's up there, I remember watching the video, in one of his speeches, he said, yes, we shall overcome too. All that was just put on. That man was calling us nigger every time he could. Practically every day. Racist. like Donald Trump is bad, Lyndon Johnson was 100 times worse. That's right. 100 times worse. Why you don't know this? Well, you know, what we got in terms of technology, everything Donald Trump done, it instantly come telling you didn't have it back during that time. But you go back and actually study. Now, I'm not talking about getting the history book from school. I'm talking about going and really study it. You find out he was one of the most corrupt, one of the most racist presidents we've ever had. And so there's some things that he really hurt, has hurt Black America with. But that's a whole different discussion. Okay, I need somebody. Come on, Sister Debbie, come pass the next sheet out for me. Now, here's what I did not have you to say. Any questions as we get to pass this out right here? Any questions? Because I told you, I know I went through 7 churches kind of fast, but if there is a question, I certainly was going to entertain it. This next thing that I need to go into, we've got to leave Revelation and go to the book of Daniel. But you need to have an understanding of this. And I need to start tonight, because I probably have to go over this again. Next time would be, because it's not the easiest thing to catch on at first, but the more you talk about it, yeah, just one sheet this time. The more you go over this, the better it will become. You begin to understand. All right, go to Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. And what we want to talk about, as you look on this sheet, it says Daniel's 70 weeks. How many of y'all have heard this before? See Deacon Long saying yes. Daniel's 70 weeks. Now, to really understand Revelation, you need to understand these 70 weeks. 70 weeks. All right? Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. Because I want you to go back and read this and study this. So I don't want you to just read it, I want you to study it. Alright? Is everybody there? Daniel chapter 9. Come on, Sister Bradley, because you'll be talking about you missed something. She know why I said that. Daniel 9, 24. Are you there yet? All right, 70 weeks are determined upon who? Thy people. Now, who's speaking here? The Lord is speaking, really speaking through an angel to Daniel. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. Speaking to Daniel. So, who is he talking about? If he say thy people, who is he talking about? He's talking about the Jews. He's talking about Israel. All right, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Who's the holy city? Or what is the holy city? Jerusalem. To finish the transgressions, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Now look what it said. You got 70 weeks. Alright, that are determined upon your people, the Jews, and upon the holy city, to finish transgression and make an end of sin. Now you know what? You know that has never happened. Look what it said, to make an end, to finish transgression and to make an end of sin. That's not going to happen until what? Until the end of time, right? Alright, to bring everlasting righteousness. We know that has not occurred yet. But let's go back to 70 weeks, 70 weeks. Now, looking at that, that would seem like you're talking about week as in terms of 7 days equal a week. That's not what this is talking about. The word week here comes from a Hebrew word, Shabuah. Alright? And what this is really talking about is really talking about 70 times 7. And instead of weeks, it's really talking about years. Now, I can go and get technical And the technical explanation will take a long time. So I'm not going to try to be technical tonight. I want you to get the meaning of this. So if you're talking about 70 times 7, and that 7 represent years. How many years you looking at? What's the answer? 490 years. So the Lord was telling Daniel that there are 490 years left that I'm going to deal with your people, the Jews. Does everybody understand that? Let me say it again. He's saying that there are 490 more years that I'm going to deal with your people. All right, let's go to the next verse. Verse 20.
How many years is 1 week?
1 week would be 7 years. Okay. All right, look at verse 25. It said, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be what? 7 weeks. So how many years? If you got 7 weeks, 7 times what? 49. 49 years. Thank you, Sister Carmen. Look at it. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince shall be what? 7 weeks. Because we know that weeks here is really referring to what? 7 years. So 7 times 7 would be what? 49. Now what this is saying, where was Daniel? Daniel was in Babylonian captivity. Right? And we know that eventually the Jews, after 70 years, because if you go back to verse 1 in the same chapter, Daniel was reading what the prophet Jeremiah had said concerning how long they would be in captivity. 70 years. When you go to read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, what happens? The Jews returned back where? Back home. Anybody remember the story of Ezra and Nehemiah? In Ezra, they started what? Building the temple, right? Nehemiah, they were what? Building the wall. So before this happens, y'all, the Lord is telling Daniel that for 49 weeks, it's going to be 49 weeks to the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Now you have to get a little technical to get those 49 years because there were about 3 different commands to rebuild Jerusalem. So theologians say the last command that was given, from that command, it took 49 years to complete the building of the temple, the wall, and the entire city. Because when Nehemiah rebuilt the wall, it took some more years to rebuild the city. But the fact is, how many years we're looking at? 49 years. All right, let's look at the next part here. It's in next scripture. And 70 and 2 weeks. Now, how many weeks we got there? How many weeks first? What's 70? 60 and 2 weeks. 62 weeks. So 62 times 7 is what? 434 years. Now look at this. If you look at this again, it says, at 62 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troubling times. And after 70, here you go again, and 2 weeks, 62 weeks, or 434 years, shall Messiah be what? Cut off. What does that mean? The Messiah be cut off. Think about it. The Messiah be cut off. That means Jesus is going to be crucified. He's cut off. That means he's being crucified. 62 weeks, 434 years. Look at this. How many years are between Malachi and Matthew? 400 years. How old was Jesus when he died? About 33 and a half. There you go. That basically going to take that 434 years. Because see, we're not exact as to the number of years between Malachi and Matthew. But we do know it's around 400. We know Jesus was about 33 and a half when he died. That takes care of that 434. Tonight, so when we get back, I can go over this again. But it's important you understand this. And I think you'll see this in a minute, at least get a little bit of it, okay? All right. Let me go back to verse 26 again. After 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself and the people, the prince that shall come shall destroy the city. Now, hold on a minute. Let me do this first of all. You got 3 divisions. The first one's 49 years from what? From the announcement of what? To rebuild the city, to actually build it. 49 years, right? There's no gap with the next division. Because after the 49 years, the 434 years begin, but it's going to stop with what happened? When Jesus is what? Crucified. So how many years you got with the first 2 divisions? You add 49 to 434. What you get? Not 485. Close. Close. 483. 483. How many years does this whole prophecy include? No. 490. So you got to get these figures right. 70 times 7 is 490. Now, how many of these years have been fulfilled? 483. All right. So that means 1 week left. Because 1 week equals to what? 7 years. So guess what those 7 years are? The 7 years of the tribulation. Let's look and see what it says. All right. If you look at this, verse 26, let me read. Say, but not for himself. Start kind of in the middle of the scripture. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city. Now this prince here is not talking about Jesus. It's talking about the Antichrist. And the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the world, desolation undetermined. Verse 27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for what? 1 week. Now, who is it talking about? Tell me, class. It's talking about who? The Antichrist. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for how long? 1 week or 7 years. This is talking about the Antichrist that's going to make a treaty with Israel for what? 7 years. He shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abomination he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. I know you got a lot of words there, but what it is saying, he shall confirm the covenant, that means treated for 7 years, and in the midst of the week, what does it mean? In the middle of the week. So in the middle of the week is going to be what? 3.5 years. He's going to break the treaty. That's what it's saying. He's going to break the treaty. Alright? And he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. That's talking about in the temple, the Jewish temple. He's going to stop the sacrifices of the Jews in the Jewish temple. You remember Jesus spoke about this in Matthew about the abomination of desolation. He's talking about the same thing here. So let's talk about what's going on here. First of all, there is a gap between the 6th and 9th week and week number 70. God's prophetic time clock stopped. You know why it stopped? Because the Jews rejected Jesus. Remember he came to his own received him not? They rejected Jesus. Jesus preached, repent. So John preached it first. And Jesus said the same. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Right? But they rejected Jesus. When they rejected Jesus, what did God do? He turned to who? Gentiles. So God's prophetic time clock stopped. In this prophecy, there's only 1 more week left.
You say that there's a gap.
Yep.
Between which 2 weeks?
The 6th to 9th week.
6th and 9th.
Because 6 to 9 weeks have been already fulfilled. That means 483 years of this prophecy has already been fulfilled. You got 1 week left, last 7 years that has not happened. That's God's prophetic time clock that is stopped. So we are living in between. Listen, look at this. We are now living in between the 6th and 9th and week number 70. Everybody understand that? Can y'all see that? I know this is not the easiest thing. But if you look. I told you I'm going to have some handouts. And if you look at the handout here, we're going to go over that figure at the bottom. That's Daniel chapter 2. We'll look at that next time. But look at the top. If you look at the, in the middle of the page, the left-hand side, do you see those 7 weeks? And you see what? 49 years to the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Alright? Then you got what? 62 weeks? Which is same as what? 434 years to the Messiah, the Prince. Because the Messiah is Jesus. He is crucified. You add the 434 to 49, you got 483 years. But notice what you have next. You got the cross, the tomb. Alright? That's where God's prophecy, the prophetic clock stops. And you see the destruction of Jerusalem, so forth. And then you see where it says gap between the 6th and 9th and the 7th week. Then you get to the end, Daniel's what? 7th week. 3.5 years, 3.5 years. Seven. The lesser tribulation, the first 3.5 years, the greater tribulation, the last 3.5. That's what you're going to be studying in the book of Revelation. Now, what happens between the 6th and 9th and the 7th week? The rapture of the church. See, right now, God is dealing with the Gentile church. But when we are caught up, his attention is going to be turned back to the nation of Israel. Because that prophecy said, these years are determined upon thy people and what? The holy city. That's what Daniel 9:24 says. The book of Revelation, I want you all to understand this. The book of Revelation actually deals with the Jews more than anybody. The Gentile church is only dealt with in the 2 chapters we just covered. Chapters 2, chapters 3. Alright? When the church age is over with the rapture of the church, his attention is turned back to Israel. Now, does that mean that he's not going to deal with Gentiles? Gentile people are going to be saved. Yeah, they're going to be saved throughout the tribulation period. As a matter of fact, there'll be more Gentiles who will get saved than the Jewish people. But the purpose of the tribulation, and you can see this in the book of Zechariah, when you get a chance to read it another time, the purpose of the tribulation actually would be to purge the nation of Israel. Because right now, what's going on with the Jewish people today? They still have not accepted Jesus as a nation. Am I right about that? You have rabbis over in Jerusalem right now who are predicting that the Messiah is coming. But guess what? They're not looking for Jesus to come as their Messiah. Now, why are they saying it? They have read all these prophecies of what? Of the Old Testament that prophesy about the second coming. See, the Old Testament prophesied about his first coming. That's when he came as a baby, born of the Virgin Mary. But there have been more prophecies in Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel about his second coming. And they have read all these prophecies. That's why the disciples kept asking Jesus, said, now look, when are you going to restore the kingdom? They were looking for restoration of the kingdom then, but they were looking for the Messiah to come at that point, the second time. They didn't understand that the Old Testament talked about his first and second coming. They completely missed those scriptures that talked about his crucifixion. You got scriptures all over the Old Testament. One of the scriptures in the book of Psalms said what? Said not a bone would be broken. That was talking about his what? His crucifixion. There were other scriptures in there. Isaiah even talked about how he would be beaten and really said you look upon him there's no beauty desired in him. I think that's Isaiah chapter 53. And what that was the prophecy of them beating Jesus, slapping him. When they got through beating Jesus before they nailed him to the cross, his face was disfigured. They plucked the hairs out of his beard. He didn't look like himself. Isaiah prophesied this. They missed all of that. They were blind to this. All right? And so the Old Testament prophets, and I'm getting ready to close, our time is out. But the Old Testament prophets, they did not see us. What do I mean by us? The Gentile church. Now, you know what else this prophecy is telling us? This prophecy also letting us know that the Jewish people have got to get that land in Jerusalem that they wanted all these years. Because in order for this prophecy to be fulfilled, the Antichrist is going to desecrate the temple. When they talk about the oblation cease, what's going to happen, class, is sooner or later, the Orthodox Jews are going to get control over the Temple Mount in Old Jerusalem, which is now being occupied by the Muslims that have a mosque there. They're going to get that land eventually. They're going to build a temple. We know that from the fact that this scripture here, plus what Jesus talked about, the abomination of desolation, that after the tribulation period starts, in the middle of the week, 3.5 years, we just read 3.5 years, the Antichrist is going to go at Jerusalem to kill practically every Jew in Jerusalem. He's going to go in and stop the sacrifice, because when they rebuild the temple, they're going to look at the law, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, and everything that talks about in terms of sacrifice and lambs and goats. They're going to go through all of that. That means that they're going to have the Ark of the Covenant, the menorah, all that you read in the Old Testament. There are all kinds of reports that they already have the Ark of the Covenant in hiding. It's going to come up. The temple is going to be built. They're going to think everything is going well until the Antichrist step in to try to kill everybody. All right? Quick. Come on. We'll take a question or two real quick if you got a question. Because I don't want to leave if it's just something there that I need to try to clear up right quick. Look like people want to ask something so bad. I'm talking about Jacob. Because he's listening over there. He's listening. Come here, sister. And what you do, get an offering together. We need to get an offering on Tuesday night. Why? Because I do a whole lot of information out in about 22 minutes. And some of them's gone. But the more you read it, the more you hear it, it starts sticking. So guess what I need y'all to do? Here's homework, y'all. Listen. Y'all listen. Homework. I want you to read Daniel chapter 9. Matter of fact, just read the whole chapter. Read the whole chapter. But get a better, but be sure you look at verses 24 to the end. Be sure you look at verses 24 to the end. Okay. Be sure you read up the chapter, Revelation chapter through Revelation chapter 6. Because next week we should get to that chapter. Chapter 6. Chapter 4 and 5 is not going to take us much time. We got some scenes in heaven. We're going to talk about the symbols. Not going to take us a whole lot of time. But what I cover tonight in terms of Daniel chapter 9 is very crucial. It's essential that you understand. So read those verses again. Look at that chart. The chart will explain those divisions. But if you don't get anything else, write a check out for me. If you don't get anything else, know this. We got what? 1 week left. Did y'all hear that?
Yes.
If you don't get anything else, how many weeks we got left?
1 week left.
1 week left. 1 week is equivalent to what?
7 years.
7 years.
7 years. And I'm going to be gone when that last week comes.
Yeah. You supposed to be, the rapture going to take place between 69 and 70. So we in between. In between the two. Because God stopped the prophetic time clock. But when Daniel's 7th week begins, if you are still here, you missed the rapture. Y'all hear what I said? if you are still here, you missed the rapture, and the world is going to become much worse. See, we ain't even got to 666. All of that's in the tribulation period. All right. We get ready to go to choir, got to rehearse. Y'all gonna read for me?
Yes, sir.
All right. We're standing together.